Somewhere at the intersection of mathematics, modern physics, and history, there's a pattern most people never stop to notice. It shows up in the constants that govern our universe, in the machinery inside your own cells, and in a historical event that still doesn't have a clean explanation. What if the universe isn't a chaotic accident? What if it's running on a blueprint? One that points toward a conscious creator. Today, we're breaking down 3 of the strongest arguments for Christianity. Not through emotion, and not through tradition, but through math, physics, and documented history. By the end, you'll see how each one stands on its own, and how, together, they become a lot harder to dismiss. Let's start with the code written into creation itself. Nature is full of patterns that look almost mathematical. The seeds of a sunflower spiral, or the scales of a pine cone, according to a real numerical sequence, the Fibonacci sequence, one so consistent that mathematicians have studied it for centuries. Count the spirals on a pine cone, and you'll find 2 sets running in opposite directions. Almost always 8 one way, 13 the other. Consecutive numbers in the same sequence. Scale up to the atmosphere itself, and the spiral arms of a hurricane trace the same pattern. A structure emerging not from design on paper, but from raw physical forces organizing themselves according to the same mathematical law. But the real mystery is bigger than any spiral. Physicists call it the fine-tuning problem. There's a set of fundamental constants baked into reality. The strength of gravity, the force binding atomic nuclei together, the rate the universe expands. And here's what stops physicists in their tracks. If even a few of these numbers were off by a fraction of a percent, stars couldn't form. Atoms couldn't bond. Chemistry and life itself would be impossible. This isn't a fringe idea. Physicist after physicist has pointed out how staggeringly precise this calibration is. Some propose a multiverse to explain it away. Others look at the exact same evidence and see something else entirely. A universe that appears calibrated, deliberately, for life to exist. Now go down from the constants to the machinery of life itself. Inside every one of your cells is DNA. And it doesn't behave like ordinary chemistry, it behaves like engineering. It stores information in a 4-letter chemical alphabet, read 3 letters at a time, like words in a language. A single microscopic cell holds around 3 billion of those letters, more information, packed more densely, than anything human technology has ever built. And here's the part worth sitting with. Everywhere else in human experience, when we find a code, a language, a program, written instructions that actually do something, we trace it back to a mind. Never to noise, never to an accident. So when we open up the most sophisticated information system known to science, and find it running the machinery of life itself, the question writes itself. Coincidence or code? For most of history, scientists assumed the universe was eternal. No beginning, no end, just infinite space and time. In the 20th century, that assumption collapsed. Observations confirmed the universe is expanding. And if you run the clock backward, everything in existence traces back to a single starting point. The Big Bang. This isn't a fringe theory, it's the mainstream scientific consensus. Space, time, and matter all had a beginning. And that raises a genuinely hard question. Everything we observe that begins to exist has a cause. A building has a builder. A painting has a painter. Things don't simply pop into existence uncaused. So what caused the universe? Whatever caused space, time, and matter can't itself be made of space, time, or matter. Because none of that existed yet. Which means the cause would have to be something outside of space and time. Something timeless. Something powerful enough to bring an entire universe into being. Philosophers call this the cosmological argument. It's been debated for centuries, and I won't pretend it's airtight, but the logic is clean. You don't get something from absolutely nothing. And if the universe had a beginning, That beginning itself needs an explanation. Modern cosmology didn't disprove a creator. In a strange way, it brought the conversation right back to one. Now leave physics behind and look at hard, documented history. Jesus of Nazareth is one of the most historically attested figures of the ancient world. We have more manuscript copies referring to him, and copies far closer in time to the events than we do for most other major figures of antiquity. That doesn't prove the resurrection, but it does mean we're not dealing with a legend slowly inflated over centuries. The documentation starts remarkably early. In fact, most historians, including skeptical ONS, date a short creed embedded in Paul's first letter to the Corinthians to within just a few years of the crucifixion. That creed lists Jesus' death, burial, resurrection, and specific appearances to named witnesses, which means the core claim wasn't a myth that evolved over generations. It was being formally recited within the lifetime of the people who said they saw it. Then there's one of the strangest artifacts in history, the Shroud of Turin. And I want to be careful here, because this one is genuinely contested. So let me give you both sides, honestly. It's a centuries-old burial cloth bearing the faint image of a crucified man. What makes it strange is that it isn't paint. No brushstrokes, no pigment, no directional lines. The image sits only on the very topmost fibers of the cloth. Now, you've probably heard that carbon dating settled this. In 1988, 3 labs dated a sample and got a medieval result, roughly 1260 to 1390. For a long time, that looked like the end of the story, but it's disputed. One of the original 1978 Shroud researchers, Raymond Rogers, argued in a 2005 paper that the tested corner had been repaired, chemically different from the rest of the cloth. Other researchers pushed back hard and say the sample was representative. That debate is still open, so the honest position isn't medieval case closed, it's the date is unsettled. What nobody has fully explained is the image itself. Teams, including physicists at Italy's NEO lab, spent years trying to reproduce it. They could make shroud-like coloration on the very top fibers, but no one has reproduced a full body image by any known method. When Enea's Paolo Di Lazzaro estimated the energy it would take to make the whole image, the figure was staggering. And he was blunt that no process we control delivers it. That's not miracle proven. It's an honest we don't know. Enea's own word for the mechanism was unexplained, and unexplained after decades of the best people trying is still remarkable. Then there are the people closest to the events, the disciples themselves. After the crucifixion, several of Jesus' closest followers were killed, rather than deny that they had seen him risen. And there's no record of a single one of them recanting to save their life. Now, people die for false beliefs all the time if they believe the belief is true. Soldiers die for bad intelligence. Followers die for con men who fooled them. But it's a different thing to accept death to protect a story you personally know you made up. Whatever these people experienced, they were convinced they had seen something real. So, look at what we've covered. A universe fine-tuned with a precision so exact that life shouldn't be possible by chance. A universe that demonstrably had a beginning, with a chain of reasoning pointing to a cause beyond space and time itself. And a historical record, early manuscripts, a creed within a few years of the events, a genuinely unexplained artifact, and ordinary people who chose death over denying what they said they saw. 3 different fields: physics, cosmology, history. 3 independent lines of evidence. None of them on its own is airtight mathematical proof. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, and honestly, you should be suspicious of anyone who says it is. But together, they're a lot harder to wave away than most people expect. They converge. They point the same direction. And I'll tell you the pattern I personally can't stop seeing. Not as proof, but as the thing that moves me. Reality is relational, all the way down. Nothing means anything alone. An electron's charge only makes sense against its opposite. A word only carries meaning against other words. Even you only became who you are in relationship, with a mother, a father, a world outside yourself. The deepest layer of existence isn't isolated stuff, it's relationship. And the strange claim at the center of Christianity is that God was never a solitary force, but a relationship. 3 persons, 1 being. That love, not matter, is the ground floor of everything. I can't hand you that from a physics equation. Nobody can. But when I look at a universe that's calibrated, that had a beginning, that's relational to its very core, a universe where a 2,000-year-old claim about a man rising from the dead carries more evidence than people assume, I find that it fits. It fits better than the alternative. So here's where it lands. Either the precision, the beginning, the history, and the relational structure of everything are all one extraordinary coincidence, or there's a creator behind the code, the cause, and the cross. That's a question worth sitting with. If you made it this far, I want to know. Which one hit you the hardest? The fine-tuning of the universe, the beginning of everything, the historical case, or the pattern underneath all of it? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more deep dives like this, big questions, real evidence, and no empty claims, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning.